Hi everyone, welcome back to The Learning Gardener. If you haven't been here before, my name is Pip, and recently I released a couple of videos actually, about some massive storms that we've had. This winter we've had probably well over 70 inches of rain, and we did get walloped with one storm that has taken trees down in my best friend's yard. She lives a couple of doors down, and I've had a heap of drainage issues. We also lost our power for 48 hours, and one of the videos that I released went through how we used our freeze-dried foods to feed myself and my friend's family while we had no power, because then all we needed to do was boil water. Because we've used some of the freeze-dried meals, we then needed to restock the pantry full for next time we lose power. So while I'm out here dealing with the residual drainage issues that have been caused by all this rain that we've had, before we get more tomorrow, the freeze dryer has been working overtime freeze drying meals. So I thought I would show you guys what I've been working on inside when I haven't been outside dealing with the aftermath. During the blackout, one of the meals that we reconstituted from freeze-dried food that surprised me by working out the best was a roast beef with a bone broth gravy. So this is a Nagi recipe. She's an Australian chef, and she makes a whole bunch of amazing recipes. So I had a couple of silver sides in the freezer. I wanted to make sure that they were cooked all the way through, which, to be honest, is how I prefer my roasts. I am not a fan of raw meat, but I know that lots of other people will think that this is a sacrilegious thing to do to meat. But the other thing you've got to consider is that with freeze drying, you don't necessarily change the bacterial load of the food. So by preserving raw meat, you've got to consider salmonella and things like that. So I wanted to make sure it was properly cooked. And then I just used my silicone soap trays, which I like to use now with freeze drying. And I jammed as much meat as I could into each one. And then I coated in a layer of gravy to help the meat not essentially dry out in the process of freezing. When I'm freeze drying, I like to pre-freeze my food wherever I can, except for things like herbs and spinach and stuff like that. It just makes the process of freeze drying go so much faster if the machine doesn't have to freeze the food first. When you're using a freeze dryer, if you're putting some frozen food in, everything needs to be pre-frozen. You can't put half frozen and half unfrozen food in. That's not how it works. So I just find that freezing the food in this way, using these little molds, increases the available surface area. It's great for portion control, and I just find that things freeze dry a little bit faster than if you, say, just put it all on the tray and let the machine sort it out itself. So I just wanted to make sure that I had enough of this for future reference, because this was particularly the boys' favorite meal, and actually with the mashed potato, this turned out absolutely beautifully. The other thing I made was a Mexican mince. This is, I think it's the Berenberg family, make like a stir-through for your mince that tastes so good. And it's just black beans and corn and one onion from memory, and then this mixed through with some bone broth. And I wanted to try and make sure I was making meals with bone broth in it, because obviously bone broth has a lot of health benefits. And this sort of thing, if you freeze it in one giant chunk like this on the tray, it's really easy to break up, so that's fine. And then I made another batch of chili con carne. I only made a little bit of rice, but evidently I made a lot more rice than I thought I did, because my rice to meat ratio wasn't quite what I normally like it to be. But I was like, oh well, the rice has been made, so I'm just going to mix it in and make the best of the situation. So in this case, again, I loaded up a full tray. But when I've done things like roast tomato sauces, I found if you do it in this sort of setup versus the silicone soap trays, it just takes forever to freeze dry. But because this is mostly rice and meat, it doesn't have the same water quantity. Then I wanted to make some gluten-free, dairy-free garlic croutons. So there is nothing I love more in life than garlic bread, and a normal person's wheat-filled garlic bread is my kryptonite. I have found that if I use Paddy the Baker's white bread and I mix butter and minced garlic and parsley together, I can make an alright substitute. It's obviously not the same and not as fluffy and amazing as regular people's bread, but it's enough that I can get through life. So we had just bought a whole bunch of loaves and I had to process them to get them in the freezer anyway. So I decided to make a whole bunch of croutons. I have done this before, but then not been able to eat them because I was doing my leaky gut diet, and at that time I couldn't have dairy. So this time I made them dairy free, and I can add them to salads or whatever you would normally add croutons into, and they taste amazing, although gluten-free ones do tend to be hard as a rock, so watch your teeth. I wanted to give you a good idea of how loud a freeze dryer is and how easy they are to turn on. And this is the finished product. You can see how dry it is. It's so light and easy to lift. And they do look a little bit different than the frozen version, but not drastically different. When you are freeze drying, I think you're maintaining about 97% of the nutritional value of the food, because there's no cooking process really that occurs when you're freeze drying, not like when you dehydrate. But it is essentially just sucking the water out and therefore making the food stable. Obviously, you want to be careful with things that are super oily, really sugary, really fatty, because fat still goes rancid. So there's a lot of things to consider in terms of what you freeze dry. But in terms of meals, I just like to make things that are going to be easy to reconstitute without going soggy, which is basically my number one category. So things like cakes and biscuits and stuff, unless you're going to eat them in their crunchy form, they go soggy. Proper storage is key, because otherwise you bought a very expensive machine and gone through a long, noisy, expensive process and your food's going to get ruined. So I like to put the food, especially for MREs, into a Mylar bag, and I use Wallaby ones. And these ones I'm putting quite a bit in one bag because I am aware that my friends' kids loved these last time, so this is more of a family pack that I'm making. For things I plan to use more regularly, I add them into not Mylar jars, the standard mason jars, and I put oxygen absorbers in, and I vacuum seal them as well to make sure they get a nice tight seal. We live in quite a humid area, so I try and get these processed as fast as possible, but it is a process that takes a little bit of time no matter what you're doing. The intention for most of these meals is that they go into individual or family pack style Mylar bag meals. And I did want to try a couple in jars, just so that I could have some quick meals on ready standby. Obviously, Mylar bags cost money, and jars you can just wash and reuse. So I wanted to have some for like those moments where either you can't be bothered to cook, or, for example, if we have another blackout, that we don't have to break into the Mylar bags immediately. We can just use the jarred food. But I wanted to have a bit of a mix. The croutons, I wanted to make sure I had some in both jar form and bag as well. While I was doing this, I was starting to think maybe I could make a soup from freeze-dried products and then just pour water in. So this was my test run to test the theory that if I put dried bone broth plus whatever vegetables, and potentially you could do like a pick and mix situation. So if you have fussy kids who, you know, won't eat this, won't eat that, they can pick and mix what vegetables they're going to add into the soup, and then everyone can have a nice, hearty, nutritious soup. And I was just experimenting with how well this would work, how well it would reconstitute, how much bone broth you actually need to get the right amount, and how quickly it would reconstitute. And I decided that this was actually a really good idea for even everyday meal readiness. And I decided that this was going to become my next goal, to create more of these. From those 5 trays, we got quite a bit of food. We've got 1.5 jars of spring onions, and we've got our soup test. We got 2 of these little bags of garlic freeze-dried gluten-free croutons. This should be enough for one person if all you have is salad. And otherwise, we've got the 1 big bag of the croutons and 1.5 jars. But these are so crunchy and hard. I think they'll be really lovely on a salad, because the salad dressing would kind of soften this up a little bit and make it really tasty. We've got 4 of these, either single person if this is all you've got, or 2-person roast beef and gravy serves if you have a side like, say, mashed potatoes. And we got 1 big family pack, and this should be enough easily for 6 or 7 people. If you've got sides, I reckon you could probably feed more like 8 to 9 people from this. I really jammed a lot of meat into each square. So this is a bit more than 1 whole roast beef. I wanted to make sure we had a couple of big family packs, like in case I have guests, or like for recently when the power went out and my best friend lives 3 doors down and she has a family of 5, and so we could just open 1 of these bags instead of what we did this time, which was opening a whole bunch of bags. But it was such a good experiment this time. But this would allow all of us to have a massive dinner, plus or minus sides. We've also got a family pack of chili con carne. This is more for 5 people because you're less inclined to have sides with this sort of meal. But I mean, again, if my best friend was eating this, she's got 2 young teenage boys. They'd probably want some sides with that. But the idea is that the serving sizes are generous, so that if this is all you've got for one day, you'll be okay. This would also easily equate to probably 2 serves of chili con carne for me. I want to have a few easy grab jars for this. Again, just for if we have the power go out again, I would rather open these than open the long-term storage of the Mylar bags. But yeah, I want to have a bit of both for sure in the pantry. We got 2 bags. One is fuller than the other of the Mexican mince, and the jar full of that's easily 2 serves. Ideally, you'd want to serve this with nacho chips, or at the very least with some avocado and maybe, if you like it, some coriander. So I want to start building up side packs, kind of like we did with the small croutons, just so that if you want to have something extra, like I want to start putting in small packs of other veggies that I could add to this soup really easily for extra flavor. Or little packs like this that you could have just a little bit of lemon or a little bit of cilantro or a little bit of coriander, depending on if you're Australian or not, or some avocado in there, so that you don't have to open a whole huge pack if you want to add something. Particularly in the case of this soup, I'd love to do more meal bags like this, or meal jars like this, because this is really easy. And you can see I just kept adding bone broth till I was happy with the intensity of it. But once you've got steam rising from something, You need to be careful not to pour your freeze-dried stuff directly in, or the steam will actually spoil the rest of the freeze-dried stuff in the jar. That's why I poured it into a cup and then poured it in here. But you know, like with kids and stuff like that, sometimes they'll go on a full-blown strike if something has tomatoes in it or has capsicum in it or whatever. So if I can start to put together like some little snack packs and some small jars that have various things like maybe onions or corn or peas or whatever, then you could easily, with your vermicelli noodles, which just need boiling water as well, prep and just have your bone broth and your basics, and then plus or minus whatever vegetables you want, and you can easily have a very, very quick, healthy meal. But I'm really happy with how much we got from this batch of freeze drying. Sometimes it doesn't feel like much comes out of the freeze dryer because if you powder it, it doesn't turn into a lot, but this time I feel like we got a lot. I decided to take my soup idea to the next level, marinate a stack of grass-fed beef, and kind of almost create like a stir-fry veggie and beef soup. And I wasn't sure if this was going to taste good, but on this particular day I was looking after my friend's daughter, and so I decided to make this for our lunch and prep it for freeze drying. And that way we could sort of test it before I freeze dried it and make any adjustments as we went. As it went, we decided it needed more spice to it to really bring out the flavor, so it was good that we did a test run, but we decided to make this up and it went beautifully. Having previously freeze-dried stacks of beef bone broth, all I needed to do was take the stir-fry mix and freeze it in portion sizes, and then get that in the freezer so that that could be freeze-dried next time. The vermicelli noodles I can add in dry, and then all I need to add is the bone broth powder, and this is good to go. So all I did after getting the thumbs up from Frida was to actually divide these up and try and mix as much as I could into these trays so that it would make a nice hearty meal and make freeze drying quite a quick and easy process. Cold. We've got lemons from my dad's tree and chili con carne. Oh, so cold. I can't even touch them, it's so cold. Cubed soup mix, and we've got some sugar snap peas that I've salted to turn into chips, and on the bottom we've got a beef bone broth that has no salt and pepper because my bone broth for a particular gravy mix that I try and make sometimes is a little bit too salty. There we go, that's our final load done. So we've got a salt and pepper free bone broth, which I plan to use in this gravy recipe, which I've mentioned a couple of times, which tastes too salty if you do it with salted bone broth. We've got a chili con carne. We have got the stir-fry soup beef concoction, which we're going to turn into meals in a jar. We've got some salted sugar snap peas, which are an awesome snack, and we've got lemon chunks, which is the first time I've done lemon chunks, but I know that these will reconstitute really well. It's just for those moments where you need a bit of lemon on something and you just don't have any lemon handy. I've never done lemon like this before. I've only ever done the peel, which is amazing to freeze dry. It looks all good, but let's have a really close look to make sure it's all dry. The stir fry blocks feel so amazing and fragile, and they're totally and completely dry. I won't even bother testing the sugar snap peas because I know that they're fine. I always love freeze drying bone broth because it's like styrofoam. It's the most bizarre feeling, and it just powders down so beautifully. But my Mixmaster thing is actually in the washing machine right now, so it's not going to be of any use to me. So I will just break these up into little bits and store it for now, and some other time, if I get round to it, I will blend that up. But you can see how dry that is. It's just amazing. So then if we try our chili con carne, it's different texture, but very similar to a dense styrofoam once again. And you can see it still looks very much like what we actually cooked together. The lemon looks very much just like a lemon frozen in time, which is what it is. And it snaps beautifully. And the only thing with something like lemon or fruit is that sometimes it can feel a bit sticky, not because it's wet, but because it's got sugars in it. This doesn't feel wet, but I can just feel that kind of sugary stickiness ever so slightly. So I'm going to get these popped into a jar quick smart. I did want to put some of these into small Mylar bags so that in emergency situations or whatever situation we're in, we can have a tiny bit of lemon but not need the whole thing. But I don't want to waste 400cc oxygen absorbers, which is all I have at the moment, on tiny bags of lemon. So I've got this big jar here, and I've got I think they're 1500cc oxygen absorbers from Harvest, right? They came with the freeze dryer, and I've used them a lot with my big jars of bone broth. So I'm just going to chuck all the lemon in here, because if I did it in like a normal quart jar, I would use so many oxygen absorbers and so many jars just to put away these lemons. And I've still got, whoops, one on the floor, stacks of lemons to deal with from my dad's tree. I haven't even harvested my huge harvest of 6 yet, but I will do a mixture of more of these when I get tiny oxygen absorbers like 100cc, and I will do some more of these because they're very handy, just to make sure this is full. But I will also do more lemon peel, even though I still have heaps. It's such a handy thing to have on standby. Next thing I'm going to do is just try and get as much bone broth into each jar as I can, because as I said, my blender is currently in the wash. Normally all of this would fit easily when blitzed up into one jar. That won't happen now. It's also because I'm not going to sit here and bother to pulverize the whole thing, because I've got to consider that it will take me a while to smush all of this down and get it all into one jar, whereas normally it would take me about 3 seconds in the blender. But the longer you have it sort of exposed to the air, the more you run the risk of it starting to reabsorb some moisture from the air. And I've historically found that bone broth kind of acts a little bit like a sponge in terms of how quickly it absorbs. It also doesn't help that here in Australia, and on the south coast in particular, that we have rather a lot of humidity. Doesn't really matter. So to seal these up, we get 2 oxygen absorbers out. I think these ones are 400s. Put 1 in each. And then I'm going to vacuum seal the lid on. That way the oxygen absorber can pull out any remaining oxygen, but it just gives you a better, faster seal, which sort of preserves the lifespan of the oxygen absorber. Chili con carne and the snow peas are going in bags for use at another time. So I'm just going to jam as much as I can into each bag. All the sugar snap peas will fit into one bag, but I've got to be careful that we don't have any sharp edges poking that might break the bag. And my aim with these in terms of how much I fill them is just to basically jam it as full as I can. I want it to be a pretty generous meal. In terms of what mylar bags I use Wallaby ones because they're thicker than a lot of other brands, which means that they're less likely to puncture, and they actually feel like very good quality. They are a little bit more expensive and they're a bit of a pain in the butt in terms of sizing. Like, they have an MRE bag, which is a similar size to this, but I actually prefer these ones with packing. Just personal preference, but these ones you have to buy a whole big pack with multiple sizes in it, which you don't, if you're me, always want. But a lot of that is because I'm storing food for one person and not many, although I am starting to incorporate some larger family size packs, especially for my best friend and her family who live just a couple of doors down, because when we had that recent loss of power, it was a really easy way to feed hungry teenagers to just bust out the freeze-dried food and everyone could choose what they wanted. We'll just pop the sugar snap peas in these and then we'll get them all sealed up. But something I learned from that experience of having the power outage with the kids is that we needed more snacks. Not because we needed the snacks, because as I said, the portions are quite generous, so everyone had eaten enough. But when there's nothing else to do and you're, I don't know, you just get a bit munchy. You get the munchies. So, you know, it was a great idea to have a few more snacks, but I'm mostly just focusing on getting as many meals put away as I can at the moment. but we had a little bit of spare space on that tray and a few sugar snap peas, so it was the perfect time. So we've now got oxygen absorbers in those. I'm going to seal them ASAP. So try and push out as much air as possible. Bit hard with these lumpy ones. Generally, if you don't squeeze all the air out, the oxygen absorber will only absorb oxygen. So if there's a lot of the rest of air in there, you might not get a full, perfect looking vacuum seal on your Mylar bag, which I always find a little bit disturbing if I'm totally honest, but it does happen, and it's not that the oxygen absorber has failed, it's just that there was a lot of other stuff other than oxygen only taking up space in the bag, if that makes any sense at all. So then I have a heat sealer which came with the Harvest Right machine. I generally prefer a hair straightener, but to be totally honest, my hair straightener stopped working, and so this is all we've got. Although Dobby did chew through the cord on this one, but it got repaired by my brother, so it's back to functioning at an ideal level. I like to, if anything, kind of like over seal them. I want to make sure these things are good and sealed, and I tend to crank up the heat pretty high on that to do that, so that's what I'm just going to do right now. Something that I did notice that I was a little bit surprised by when we were using these for the electrical power outage was how strong they are. Like, obviously I chose the gusseted variety because it stands up, makes it easier to fill, but they do have a little tear tab on them, and I thought we'd be able to easily tear them. Not so. It was quite difficult to open them, and in the end I think we needed scissors to open them. But that made me feel a lot better about the security of this food in these bags. So they're all sealed now. So what we're going to do is make these individual packs of jam in a jar, of soup in a jar. So I have previously freeze-dried bone broth, that's beef bone broth with salt and pepper and all of that sort of stuff, and I've got some green onions, spring onions, and we're going to pop them in with these and hopefully with the vermicelli noodles, and then just vacuum seal and put a oxygen absorber in, and then hopefully all we need to do is add boiling water, and then within a minute or so our soup will be ready to go. If you hear any cracking in the background, that's the freeze dryer defrosting, but I'm just going to try and get these going as quickly as possible and just get all of the ingredients in and sealed back up and get a bit of a conveyor belt of product going. I'm putting about half a cup of bone broth powder in. I don't remember how much roughly that will turn into, but hopefully it'll be more than enough to be flavoursome. Worst case scenario, once I try one of these, I can always come back and add some more if it needs it. I am so excited by these as a concept to have in my pantry, because this, as a gluten-free person, is like the ultimate 2-minute noodles, and for it to be such nourishing, healthy ingredients and to have already been approved recipe-wise by my best friend's kids. I mean, Frida has already said this is what she's having in the next blackout. It's pretty awesome that we can just jam all of this goodness into a jar and have it just sitting there for a rainy day, borderline literally. And the only downer is that I can't try one of these out right now, because we did put, I'm pretty sure, I'll have to go back and check the video, capsicum in it, and at the moment for my leaky gut protocol I have subsequently found out that I am not to be eating capsicum for the next 6 weeks. So fun times. If I go back and look at the video and discover that we didn't put capsicum in, I will be trying one of these jars immediately. Okay, I'm gonna put oxygen absorbers in these and seal them up. I went back and reviewed the footage, and there's no capsicum, but there is chili powder, so I'm not supposed to eat that either. But oh well, what kind of science experiment would this be if we didn't actually test it? So I've got freshly boiled water, and there's a little bit less of the sort of stir-fry ingredients than in the jars, but it still should be a reasonable test. It definitely looks like a half a cup of bone broth powder is enough. I might even actually put a little bit more water in that. Then by the time the noodles have softened, that should be ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see what the flavor profile is like and the textures of the vegetables. I feel pretty good now after these last few weeks of sort of restocking and improving my meal readiness for the next time we find ourselves in a situation where trees fall down and we have no power for a couple of days, or whatever the case may be. I feel like if I have guests, if it lasts for a week, if whatever, I'm okay now, and I like that feeling. And it's a great experiment to do with the freeze dryer. Obviously, I would love to also be able to can some meals in a jar. I find pressure canning on this induction stove just so painful. I need to get a gas top for out on the deck for sure. But the other problem is there's a lot of foods that I can't actually eat, and I am not skilled enough in the world of canning to know what I can substitute, what I can't, and how to make those ingredients safe. So I feel a bit more confident with the freeze drying. So it's really nice that from one load we got 5 servings of chili con carne, which is really probably enough for 6 people quite happily. Some snack sugar snap peas, some lemons, we got some bone broth to use next time I need to make gravy, and we got 9 jars plus dinner from the soup in a jars, which is just awesome. I really like the idea of having more in jars. Obviously, these ones are going to store better because the Mylar bag is more designed for long-term storage. The more exposure to light, the more these foods will fade. But this is a lot more cost effective, for example, like the other day when we had the power outage, rather than opening the Mylar bags. And also this is more user friendly for me. Like if I'm just having a day where I'm done with the world, then I can just boil some water, pop this in, and I'm done. I can even eat it in the jar. We are not doing that tonight. We are going to, it's a bit hot, test it and see how we go. It is really, really nice. I actually think the meat needs a little bit longer to reconstitute. It's only had like however long it takes for a kettle to boil. But even the bok choy still has a little bit of crunch to it. The veggies taste pretty well perfect, and the flavor is there, and that's really all you're looking for. And this is like such a nice, hearty, nutritious meal that can be ready by the time you've boiled the kettle, and that is so much better for you than 2-minute noodles, and it's going to hopefully lead to me making a lot better choices for my health than have been made at other times. So hopefully a step in the right direction. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video where we make a whole bunch of freeze-dried meal ready packs and jars so that we are ready for the next time life strikes. If you have enjoyed the video and you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. It helps YouTube decide that our content is worth showing to other people, and the more other people see this content, the more support the channel gets, the more income I get from producing these videos, and the more I know what you guys kind of enjoy seeing on this channel. But if you have already subscribed, I really, really appreciate your support, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.